So welcome to this CIPD Midlands student induction event, and thank you very much to all of you for joining us this evening. This event follows on from the student inductions that we did at the start of the academic year in 2020. So in October and November, we ran a couple of sessions which were put together by the student engagement leads from across the Midlands, several of whom are here this evening. And we took the opportunity of running online events to get all the branches together to run a sort of joint induction event. And we've been keen to follow this up ever since with an end of year event for those students who are finishing and about to qualify. So what we're going to look at this evening is what you can do next, what are your next steps, and how CIPD can help you. And do appreciate that it's been a tough year for all of you. So want to say well done to all of you for sort of staying with it with your studies and making it to this point and making it towards the end, or hopefully at least the end is in sight. Just very briefly going to introduce the CIPD Midlands network so you know a bit more about the group that you've come along to this evening. I probably appreciate that most of you are probably from these Midlands branches, but we did open the event up across nationally as well, so we may have people from branches outside the Midlands as well. But across the UK, CIPD has 50 local branches and they're run by volunteer members. We're here to support you. And in the Midlands, we have 10 branches that are listed here. And these 10 branches have got together to form what we call the Midlands Area Partnership, which you can see the area that it covers on the map. And we've got 22,000 CIPD members in this area. So these branches get together to organise regional activities as well as the local ones. So I'm pleased to say this evening we are joined by several volunteer members of the Midlands branches. I don't know if they want to give us a bit of a wave, the people that are here, and you'll meet them this evening as the event progresses. And if you haven't already done so, I would recommend that you take the time to have a look at the branches page on the CIPD website and to connect with your local branch to see what activities that they've got in place. You can also connect with us online. So we've got a Midlands page, cipd.co.uk/Midlands. We've got a LinkedIn group and we've also got a Twitter page. So do feel free to have a look at that and to tweet tonight as well. Here are some sort of housekeeping bits and pieces about the way we're going to run the event tonight. You will be muted during the session, but please do use the chat box to introduce yourself and to ask questions during the event. As I've said, the event is being recorded and the slides and the recording will be circulated to you afterwards. Just to point out, we'll be recording the first section where we've got presentations, but when you get into the breakout rooms, we won't be recording those sections. And also we'll be sending out a survey monkey after the event, and we do really appreciate all your feedback. So do spend a couple of minutes completing this if possible. And I'm also just going to run through the agenda for tonight. So after the introduction, we'll be joined by Sarah Wood, who is the CIPD Memberships Project Manager, and she's going to talk to you about CIPD as your career partner. And then we're joined by Alyson Ainsworth from LHH, who's going to talk about starting your job search and interview tips. There'll be a joint Q&A with Sarah and Alyson at the end of the session. So I said, as they're doing their presentations, do feel free to put some questions for them into the chat. We'll hopefully then have a 5-minute screen break to give you a chance to stretch your legs, and then we'll come back and do the interactive breakout sessions where you'll have an opportunity to talk to recently qualified CIPD members about the steps that they've taken since they've qualified, their experiences of studying and where they've gone in their careers since then. And then we will hopefully finish the evening by 7 o'clock. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Sarah Wood, who's going to talk to you about CIPD as your career partner.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eleanor. So I'm Sarah Wood, and as Eleanor said, I work in the membership team at the CIPD, and it's our team that's responsible for your membership benefits. And for this session, what I'm going to do is highlight some of the support, which I hope you'll find useful now that you're coming to the end of your studies. There's a lot of resources for us to cover. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, really. Go on to the next slide, please. And what I always say is, if there's one thing that you kind of take away from this, it's where your membership benefits live. And that's actually on the homepage of the CIPD. And what I'm thrown a little bit because I thought I had the URL on here, but it's actually www.cipd.co.uk/benefits. And that's kind of like your shop window, really, for all of your benefits. So yeah, so I'm aware I'm going to cover a lot of things. If you want to find where all of this information is in one place, that's the URL, but we can definitely share that in the chat for you. Okay, so you're either coming to the end of your studies or you've finished your studies now. I'm aware that some of you may already be working in the profession, whilst others may be looking for the first role. So for those that are looking for the first your next role, I'm going to show you now some highlights to help you in your job search and job search success. And this is Dipesh here, photo Dipesh, and he's actually one of the, he's going to be moderating one of the breakout rooms later. So you'll be able to get lots of information there from Dipesh about how CIPD membership has helped support him throughout his career. So as you should all know, it's, CIPD membership is recognised worldwide, and it shows that you've got a commitment to the professional standards. So whether you're new to the profession or perhaps you're more, hopefully you'll become a more experienced people professional, your membership really does showcase the level of knowledge and impact that you're making within the people profession. And as you're aware, as a member, you can use the relevant designation after your name on LinkedIn and your CV and online. And members do tell us that it really does make a difference when they're applying for roles. And some roles and organisations actually specifically recognise CIPD membership status as part of their selection process. And it's really important to remember that you can only use those designations if you're in active membership. So it's really important that you renew your membership each year to continue to do so. So as your career progresses, it's equally important to make sure that your grade really does accurately reflect your level of knowledge and capability. And we have an upgrading and experience assessment page on our website, which has lots of information on how you can do this. And it also includes the criteria for each grade of membership. And there's quite a kind of useful online tool which you can go in and put your experience in there, answer a series of questions, and it'll actually show you the best kind of routes to the next membership grade. Next slide, please. So throughout 2021, we've been running numerous webinars to help support members, specifically around careers. And the main one has been called Building Your Career in 2021. And this series has provided, expert advice to help identify and achieve the next steps on your career path. They provide practical and really useful advice and tips on taking the first steps into the profession and how to progress. And they also provide first-hand accounts of how some senior members of the profession have really successfully carved out their own career path. They're available on demand. So if you've missed any of them, as I say, they've been running for the last 12 months, then you can actually catch up with those. And they're actually all saved on our website. And again, there are links to these from that main membership benefits page that I mentioned earlier. And also we've launched a couple of months ago, a series of half-day virtual workshops. And they're actually run by Alyson, who's going to be talking to you in the next session on tips and techniques on really kind of achieving career success. And these workshops are specifically aimed at CIPD members. They're only for CIPD members. They're completely free, and we deliberately limit the numbers who can attend to make sure that those that do attend have a real opportunity to interact directly with Alyson for advice and guidance. They're hugely popular, and because of that, what we do is we advertise through our CIPD Twitter and LinkedIn accounts. So if anyone's interested in signing up for these, we do have a waiting list for people who'd like to attend. Definitely go through those channels. Still apply even if that month's session is full, because what we can do is we can contact you and hopefully get you on another session. So they are running throughout the rest of this year and into next year. And we've had some really great feedback from members, and they've been really useful in kind of really supporting their career search. Next slide, please. So it's really important to make sure that you're well prepared when you're job searching. And we've got this online tool, Career Hub, which does just that. And what it does is it kind of really gets your CV in its best possible shape, and it prepares you for interviews. There's loads of tools on there. Again, this is member only access, and you can access this through the website. So you need to be logged into the CIPD website for it to recognise you as a member. It features things like there's a CV builder on there, a CV scoring tool, personal development planner, and there's also a range of assessments that you can take. So on things like resilience, motivation, and what they'll do is they'll critique you and kind of give you an understanding on where the gaps are for you and where the areas of development exist for you. We've also developed a series of microsites. So these are kind of little sites where it groups this career content together, and therefore members who might have specific career needs. So for example, if you've been out of work for a while and you're looking for back to work support, there's one for students. So there's one specifically for people like you. There's one for consultants, and there's also one for experienced professionals. And then lastly, it's also worth mentioning Interview 360. And what this is actually a large library of the most commonly asked interview questions, along with kind of key points and key answers to help you kind of get through that interview process. As well as that, there's some mock interviews, so you can test your ability to come up with, well thought through answers under pressure. There's also loads of videos on there as well from career coaches and from recruiters, and also from people that have been in a position that you are in now, and some tips and some advice. Next slide, please. So we have a lot of members who would have been where you are today. So perhaps, you're qualified, you've got limited experience, or perhaps you feel stuck at your current level and you're finding it difficult to find opportunities to progress. So the CIPD community really does provide you with an opportunity to connect in with other members and learn from their past experiences. It's a really friendly place. It's a really inclusive environment. And our members love to support and provide guidance to other CIPD members where they can. We've actually got a dedicated careers forum where you can read other members' tips and advice on overcoming certain career challenges. And there's lots of threads on there offering advice on, getting your first role, how to stand out from the crowd, and how to succeed at interviews. And again, you can access our online community either via desktop, or there's an app which we launched about 12 months ago now. And again, all of the information on this and everything else I've mentioned is signposted via the membership benefits webpage. In addition, as you're aware, we have this really thriving network of over 50 local branches. And these have adapted fantastically, as you'll know, to kind of doing these virtual sessions. And, there's a range of events that, are run throughout the year. So definitely kind of stay connected with your local branch. And also, as I mentioned before, we have got member-only social media groups, so on LinkedIn and Facebook. And, that's one of the places where we advertise some of our more kind of restricted events. So it's definitely worth kind of following us there. Next slide, please. So if you have some free time, you can take part in one of our many volunteering schemes. And this could actually be volunteering at your local branch, or one of the mentoring schemes such as Steps Ahead Mentoring. And that scheme actually helps young job seekers find work. So not only gives you an opportunity to give back to the profession, but it's also something which looks a really positive thing to put on your CV. You can volunteer at schools or colleges, and you only really need to pledge, we only kind of ask for, up to an hour a year. So it's not a massive kind of time consuming, but what you can do is help run workshops on topics such as CV writing and interview skills. And there's also some Inspiring the Future workshops. So these are just a few of the volunteering schemes available to you. And again, you can find out more and register your interest on the CIPD website. And on there's also information on our really popular mentoring scheme. And again, that's currently we're trying to recruit more mentors. We have more mentees than we have mentors, but where possible, we try and kind of pair people up where possible throughout the year. So it's a bit of a waiting list on that one, but it's a really popular scheme for members. Next slide, please. So for those of you that are currently looking for work. Hopefully, you know, you'll soon be in a new role. But for those who are already working, I'm going to now take a few minutes just to show you some of the areas of support to help you to be more impactful in your role. Next slide, please. So the Knowledge Hub, so this is the main area of our website, and this actually contains all the CIPD content. So this is where the fact sheets are, all of our CIPD research, our guides, our reports, past and present, and our podcasts and webinars. And you'll also get access to EBSCO journal database, which some of you may actually be familiar with and have used in your studies. But on there's also leading journals and magazines and company profiles, which can help you plan for your interviews if there are certain organisations that you want to work for. And in addition, we of course have our regular e-newsletters, and the most used and accessed one is actually the CIPD update, and that actually gets sent out weekly to members. And if you're not aware of it, it provides roundup of all the latest news, research and content in one place. That's a really good one to register for if you're not currently receiving that. Next slide, please. So in addition to the Knowledge Hub, we've actually created specific hubs for key topics within the profession. And these hubs contain the guidance and resources to help members address particular issues in their workplace. Within each hub, you'll find specific guides, Q&As, podcasts, webinars, and lots more. And they're regularly updated to make sure they contain the most relevant and up-to-date information. The coronavirus one has been immensely popular. I think we've had over 4 million views on that one at its peak. And it's been really, really good at supporting members and non-members through the challenging previous year and a half. And next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk to you just briefly about some of the helplines that we have. And these are all completely free for members. We've got the Employment Law Helpline. This provides guidance on all aspects of UK employment law. It's 24/7, and it helps you kind of get clarification on any work issues, and will help you kind of work through situations. It provides a really valuable quick check or second opinion on legal issues that you may be encountering. And the kind of topics that it covers are things like dismissal, discrimination, redundancy, and also if you have any questions on new or impending legislation, that's a really useful one. So the Employment Law Helpline is for you to use whilst you're at work, whereas the Personal Legal Helpline is for you to use out of work. So this provides confidential one-to-one advice on any personal difficulties that you may be being affected by. And again, that's if you're being affected by redundancy or contracts of employment. And again, this is 24/7, and as a member, you get free, unlimited access to that. And that helpline also, which is different to the other two, you can actually provide support for your families as well. So if your family has a legal question, they can actually tap into that helpline as well. So that's really good. The Whistleblower Helpline. So we've partnered with Protect, they're the whistleblowing charity and the leading authority in this field. And they, again, this is an expert helpline to help you handle any whistleblowing concerns that you may be aware of. Again, calls are free, and there's no limit to the number of calls that you can make each year. Next slide, please. So we've got 2 industry magazines, People Management, which is published 10 times a year, and Work Magazine. We're aware for People Management, there have been some delivery issues due to COVID. And because of that, it's now actually available as a digital page turner. So again, you can access that through the website, and that's got all the past issues, I think, in the last year and a half from when COVID struck. So if you haven't been receiving People Management, you can actually access it through there. If you're a chartered fellow, you'll also receive Work Magazine, and this is a quarterly strategic thought leadership journal. And in here, it's packed full of insightful articles and interviews, and it also debriefs all the latest research from the business world across a breadth of industries. And that's a really popular one amongst our chartered fellows. The PM Jobs website complements the paper version, and it's actually the official job site for the CIPD. So you can search for your next role on there by categories or by specialism. And you can also sign up to receive job alerts. And there's also, alongside that, career advice. So if you want to be the first one to hear about specific jobs, again, that's a really good kind of resource to tap into. Next slide, please. The profession map, which I hope you're all kind of aware of, and you've all been given kind of insight that throughout your course, sets out the international benchmark for the people profession. And it's used to help people make better decisions, to act with confidence, and to perform well. And also, to drive change in organisations, as well as to help you progress your career. So the map really does provide the foundation to help the profession move forward, and it embraces change in the modern world of work. So you can use this to benchmark your knowledge and behaviours and values against the global industry standard. And it identifies 4 different impact levels and details the knowledge and behaviours required to excel at each of them. So this means you can see exactly what it takes to make a positive contribution. So whether you're a senior leader or a dedicated specialist, or just starting out in your field, it's a really good tool to access. And we've developed content to help further your understanding on when and how to apply the profession map in your day-to-day roles. And again, this is completely free content for members only. It's exclusive to members, and it explores those 8 core behaviours of the profession map in detail. And you can access this content as part of your self-directed learning journey as well, to support your professional development. So this is just the first step for us. There's actually, we're actually working on a comprehensive series of learning content based on the map. And there's going to be more news on that later this year, about a new learning platform that we have. Next slide, please. So obviously this year's been quite stressful for a lot of us already for more than one reason, but we acknowledge that looking for and moving into a new job can also be equally as stressful, and as I say, this year's particularly brought added pressures to that. So at the start of the pandemic, we launched a new wellbeing helpline for the UK and Ireland. Calls are free, completely confidential, and again, they're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So this is for you specifically to help to support your well-being during this time. It's manned by qualified therapists accredited by the British Association for Counselling and Physiotherapy. And it also provides access to some additional legal information services around debt and financial information, as well as there's a manager consultancy and support on there. In addition to the helpline, there's also a wellbeing app. And again, you can download this and access wellbeing webinars. There's some mini health checks on there, and some self-help programs, and that's been really popular. We've had thousands of members kind of interact with that, and it's really good for them. Also good if you manage a team and you're looking after your team's well-being. There's support on there for you as a people manager. So in addition to the helpline, we've obviously got a range of wellbeing content around health and wellbeing. And these are things like, the guides, the reports, fact sheets, and podcasts again. And they're looking at subjects such as resilience and, managing and supporting employees. So they're really kind of, again, it's another kind of layer of support that we provide to members and to help you and to help your team through difficult times. And then lastly, it's probably worth mentioning that we do offer financial support. We have a number of registers for members which provide a reduced membership fee. So, for example, if you are currently job seeking, or if your finances have been affected by COVID, there are some quite generous discounts that you can get from your membership fee. So again, that's the URL there, but you can find all this information via that benefits website that I mentioned at the top of this presentation. So last slide, I think that brings us to the end. I'm aware that Hello.
That is the last slide.
That's the last. So, yeah, so I'm aware that we've covered a lot of information there. And as I say, it's just really to hopefully help you on this next stage of your career, just to be aware of some of the things that we can, provide through your membership. And obviously, the more use and the more awareness that you have of this, the more value you get from membership. So the URL we will share with you, and we can also share the slides, and I'll be available at the end of Alyson's session to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I think there are a few questions that popped up in the chat. If you might want to have a look at those, and then we'll pick them up at the end. And hand over now to Alyson.
Excellent, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. I've been busily watching the chat. I recognise a couple of names of people who are on there, so hello to Nasheen and to Rohit that have already been on my courses, so you'll see some of the material is familiar, but if you haven't been and you want to go, as Sarah said, please do sign up for them. We've had great fun running them, or I have anyway. So if you just want to move on, I've got quite a few slides here, and what the purpose of me is not to talk around them in one go, really. Is some of it you will need to take away and digest, so I've put together a pack that will be helpful. But I always start with the premise that we're thinking about our next role or our next job as part of our career, and it isn't just about the job. It's made up of lots of different aspects, so it incorporates things like your your values, things that you like doing, things that you don't like doing, your skills and strengths, etc. And in the sessions I've been running, I've spent quite a lot of time exploring this, because I think getting to grips with it, actually understanding what the next job will look like, it isn't, as I say, just about the role, it is about fit. And we talk a lot about fit. It's like going out, the analogy I use is going out to buy a new jacket. You know you need one, but you don't really know what it looks like until you put it on and try it on for size. And it has lots of different elements. So it might be a certain style, it might be a certain colour, it might be a certain shape, etc. Jobs are a bit the same. It is a bit like thinking, well, what are the elements that are important? And as I say, it isn't just about the role. So I encourage people to think about their careers in terms of the elements that we talk about here. So, what are my skills? I'm a huge believer in neuplatia skills or strengths. And the difference for me between a skill and a strength is that a skill is something you're good at. A strength is something that gives you energy. So it's the additional thing that it motivates you and drives you. And ultimately, your performance will be better if you are operating in the area of strength. So if you're considering all of these aspects, so say things like motivators, things like what you like doing and what you don't like doing. Often people say to me, I don't really want to know, I don't know what I want to do next, but I know what I don't want to do. Maybe I want to do less of this. So it's drawing together all of these things that form a picture that say, what does good look like for me? So I encourage you to think about all of these things in isolation as part of the overall matrix that you would overlay on any job that you're thinking of applying for, in order to ensure fit. Okay, Eleanor, thank you. So I've been asked to talk about interviewing in particular. A formal traditional interview is where somebody asks you questions and you give them an answer. Yeah, that's absolutely what it is, to a certain extent. But nowadays, as I say, more strategic interviewing is around organisational need and fit. And always remember that it's a two-way process. This is about you deciding if it's right for you, as well as the individual or the organisation deciding whether you are right for them. So it's about your needs versus the organisation's needs. So back to that analogy of fit, it has to feel right. It has to feel that it's the right thing for both of you. Okay, I'd like to move on. So say we talk about the 3 C's in interviewing: competence, compatibility and chemistry. It's, can I do the job? Clearly that's important. Technically, have I got the ability? And again, thinking about looking at the job description to say, have I got all of those qualities? Not necessarily all of them. And again, I get challenged quite a bit on this on courses, saying, often we focus on the things we haven't got. I would certainly encourage people to apply for jobs, even if there are parts of it that you haven't got, because with every job there are aspects that you can learn. But more importantly, I think to a certain degree is compatibility and chemistry. So do I want to do this job, and will I fit in with the organisation? And you know, do I want to work for this particular person, or in this particular team, or in this particular organisation? And those are the kind of questions you need to be asking yourself before you decide to apply for jobs. Okay, thanks, Eleanor. So this is some, if you want to just build that slide as I talk, this is some interesting a survey that we did through our recruiters as part of LHH. We are part of a bigger brand that does a lot of recruitment, and clearly, you know, these are the top skills that, in terms of success factors, absolutely your technical skills and experience are up there as a 9. But interestingly, above that sits, you know, fit, the word I've already used, attitude and values. And I'm seeing more and more, so my clients are saying to me, you know, the differentiator is does somebody come in and do they really want that job? And again, I've seen this as a question that a lot of companies open with is, you know, why do you want to work for us? And, you know, and if you can't answer that question, you know, it's going to set the tone for the rest of the interview. They want to know you're keen. They want to know you're interested in working for them. And also, as I've already mentioned, that whole thing around values. Do your values align to the organisation? Have you looked up the values on the internet? Do you know what they are? But attitude, and by attitude, I also mean energy. I think, you know, your energy and enthusiasm. A good friend of mine recently had a rejection from a role, and you know, her feedback was, and this was an HR colleague, was, we didn't think you were interested in the job. You know, that's pretty poor. Actually, to be fair, it was true. She probably wasn't interested, as interested as she should have been in it. But you know, you wouldn't really want to get that feedback because you just didn't come across as enthusiastic. Okay, move on. Thank you. Sorry, that was the build on the slide. So just move on to the next slide, please. So types of interviews, and again, I'm not going to go into detail on this. We haven't got time, sadly. But you know, all types of interviews need preparation. My 2 top tips around interviewing is preparation and mindset. You know, if you go into an interview thinking, I don't like interviews and I'm going to fail, chances are that is what will happen. You have to go into an interview with a mindset of, this is just as much about me as it is about the person interviewing me. Back to that strategic interviewing. You're looking for fit. You're looking to see whether you want the job as much as they want you. All different types of interviews, informal chats. Even an informal chat is a form of an interview. Don't ever get fooled by that. I've been in that situation where I was lined up for an informal chat and the opening question was, what are your top 3 skills? You know, they still want information from you. So whatever level of interview you're at, you still need to be pitching yourself. And that question in itself is a great starting point. It's one of my favourite questions, and I'm sure if you've attended my courses, you'll know I wax lyrical about that question. If you can't answer the what are my top 3 skills question, you are probably not selling yourself. You know, bearing in mind that it is the buyers and sellers market. You are selling your skills, somebody is buying them. You need to know what they are, whether that's on your CV, your LinkedIn profile, and in your interview. So we talk about screening interviews, typically phone interviews, but video interviews are coming in a lot more. And obviously over the last 18 months, we've seen a rise of the Zoom interview. And I have got a couple of tips on that on a slide later on, but you know, be prepared to do both types of interview. You know, the benefits of being remote are clearly that you can have your notes in front of you, and that you are possibly more comfortable sitting in your own home than if you've had to rush to a venue to meet somebody face to face. But you know, it is still an interview, and you still need to prepare as you would for any kind of other interview. I think I'm not going to go into the detail of everything. The most common type of interviews is behavioural based or competency based interviews. And a lot of the big organisations use them because they are deemed to be the fairest, the most transparent way. And again, your preparation is to think about the examples that you have in which you could demonstrate that you have those skills. Okay, we move on. So as I say, preparation is key. If you move on to the next slide, please, Eleanor. Just want a couple of questions. The opening question, tell me about yourself. If it's not why do you want this job or why do you want to work for this company, it's often 80%, 90% of the time, tell me about yourself. This is a dream question if you've planned what you are going to say. So what do they want to know about you? A little bit about your personal life, but never start with that. It is always, what are you in terms of your educational background, your professional qualities, and again, those key skills. I'd be pushing those key skills into this section. This is me, this is what I've done, and my key skills are X, Y, Z. And this can set the tone for the whole interview for you, that relaxes people into thinking, oh, actually, yeah, they have got what we're looking for. So think about scripting that particular question. Okay, Eleanor, can we move on? I mentioned competency-based interviews. We use at LHH the SOAR framework. A lot of organisations use STAR. I'm not sure why we use SOAR and not STAR. Situation, obstacle, action and result. And again, the key to answering a good competency question that's going to get you the maximum amount of marks is to focus on the action. So what did you do? And also what was the result? So if you split that into 4 categories, your 70% of your marks will come in the action, 15% in the results, and 15% in the situation and the obstacle. And that's one of the reasons we go wrong answering questions in a competency framework, is we spend a lot of time talking about the situation or the person and describing it. Actually, that's not relevant. They don't necessarily need that level of detail. They want to know what you did. So preparing your answers to competency questions, focus on your actions. What did you do, and what was the result? So again, practice using that framework. It's really helpful. Okay. Practice questions. I put these on here for these are some of the challenging questions. The weakness question. That always trips people up. What is my biggest weakness? We're also tempted to say, I haven't got a weakness. I'm good at everything. You're clearly not going to go in for a job in finance and say, I don't like numbers, or in HR and say, I don't like people. You're not going to bring out that level of kind of weakness, but you are thinking about how you would answer that question, and it's a really difficult one to answer on the spot. So think about that answer. My view on that is to think about something you've learned. So, in the past, I wasn't particularly good at X. I often use the one I wasn't particularly good at delegating. I had to learn to delegate to my team and to coach them to deliver. And therefore, the benefit was to get more time back. But think about some of those really tricky questions beforehand. And again, there's a list of a few there. If you move on, Eleanor, I think the next slide is this particular question. I'm not planning on going through this in the interest of time, but this is one that trips people up a lot. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Don't lie about this question. You need to be genuine. You also need to be realistic. I worked with in recruitment with graduates in my previous corporate life, and graduates would say to me, I'm going to be the MD in 5 years' time. No, you're not. It's a case of actually being realistic about where you see yourself. But again, that enthusiasm and that level of ambition needs to be in there somewhere. Again, I had a lady rejected from a job recently because she didn't come across as ambitious enough. But it's not about that. It's about being realistic. Where will I get? Understand where that career path is, etc. So I'll leave you to read that one in your own time. If you want to move on. Prepare questions for your employer. Always have things at the end of the session that you can ask them. I love some of these questions. What will success look like for me in the first 3 months? You're visualizing yourself in that job. I've already started. I'm working with you. I'm thinking about how good I'm going to be when you sit me down for my probation review. Ask them some questions. Ask them about the culture. Why do you like working here? What's the corporate culture like? What's the social life like? Is it a social team? Tell me a bit more about the team, etc. So lots of questions. Always have a question prepared. Okay, shall we move on, Eleanor? And again, I mentioned the two things at the beginning, one being interview, the other being mindset. So if you just move on to the next slide, you know, what is mindset? Mindset's about preparation, really. You know, it's getting yourself in the right space, and that, you know, how to control your nerves, because everybody is nervous with interviewing. Nobody likes interviewing. Well, occasionally I do meet somebody who says I like an interview, but most people say, you know, I find it, you know, really difficult. I get very anxious. So we all want to be the best that we can. So how do we work on our nerves? I think, to say, the word for me is energy. Focus on your energy, but do whatever you need to do in order to get yourself in that right space. Think about your breathing. Breathing is one of the easiest things that we all do, but we forget to do when we're anxious. So sit and think about, you know, just calming yourself down before you start your interview by breathing deeply. Those sorts of techniques really work. Visualize yourself in a role, listen to music, etc. You know, etc. So if you have somebody to practice with, and Sarah's already referred to some fantastic resources that you have on the CIPD Career Hub, then go and, you know, practice doing some interview practices, particularly if you are doing a Zoom interview. You know, be able to look at what other people can see. What can they see around you, etc. How are you coming across? Can they hear you? And all those sorts of things, really important. Okay, if you move on. So I'm not going to run through this one. I am conscious of time. There are a lot of slides in here, but think about what you need to bring with you on the day. Take a copy of your CV. You can have that in front of you. You can have your list of questions in front of you, particularly the job description, and maybe even your notes on the examples you're going to use. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it shows you've done your preparation. Clearly you can't read them, but if you got absolutely stuck and you had that horrendous brain freeze moment, then at least you could glance at them and say, okay, that was the example I was going to talk about, and then you can move on. The other one I get asked about quite often is what to wear. You know, people do expect you to go smart for an interview, even if it is it's a dress down culture, or it's an atmosphere where you an environment where you would wear a uniform or whatever else. You're still expected to look smart, and it does help. It gives you confidence. So dress appropriately for an interview, even if you're doing it on Zoom. Okay, just move on. A strong close. I think the strong close is always really important. Make sure you leave them with the impression that you are interested in the job. So, you know, what are the next steps? On the basis of everything I've heard today, you know, I'm really interested in the job. I know at that point you're probably just desperate to finish the interview and move on, but just make sure you thank them for their time, and then show them that you're interested in the role. Okay. Follow up post the interview. A thank you note goes a long way. You know, just a thank you for the time, thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to hearing from you. Again, it just shows that you're keen or you're interested. You know, if you reflect on the interview, don't torture yourself. Once it's done, it's done. But reflect if there were any questions that tripped you up that you could go away and pick up. Okay, move on. And I think lastly, this is sort of last coming to the end of the slides, do's and don'ts of Zoom. You know, we've had to all adapt with technology over the last 18 months, and it's, you know, everyone's done amazingly well on that. But again, think about, you know, your background, think about what's behind you, think about how you use your devices, test the technology. There is nothing that's going to give you more apoplexy and meltdown than if you start to log on to your interview and realize you need to download a particular app. Or, you know, it's on Google Meets and you thought it was on Zoom. You know, test it all before that you've done. If it goes off, if your internet goes down or whatever else, try not to panic. Don't panic about those things. This happens. You know, just go back into the interview. You know, click back on the link and restart. Okay, I think we're coming to the end of the slide. Yep, that's it. So I'm conscious there's lots of information on there, and I've rattled through at speed, but I know that we're up against the clock doing this stuff. Next step for you is start to think about those examples, those stories, etc. You know, research, use the information that you've got, go back over those questions and see you know, how you feel. Thank you very much. Hope that's been helpful.
Right, do the classic thing and unmute myself now. Yes, Alyson, that's been really helpful. Thank you. All sorts of hints and tips in there. We will send the slides out. As I said, I haven't been monitoring the chat, but I don't know if there's any. Well, here's one question already. What advice would you give someone who has neurodiverse qualities?
Oh, that's a very good question. That's put me right on the spot. I suppose it depends what you mean by neurodiverse qualities. If the person want to come off mute and give me a bit more on that.
It was Flora Jane, if you're...
Oh,
Hi,
right.
Alyson, it was me.
Ah.
Yeah, I was asking because when you have an interview, sometimes interviewers ask 3 questions all in one, for example, and some people who might have autism, ADHD, dyslexia, or any other neurodiverse quality, for example, they can't answer those 3 questions all in one.
No.
So just in general advice, really, what would you give, please?
It's a great question. I think that the general advice would be always ask for clarity. So, you know, if you're not sure, even with something like the tell me about yourself question, if you say, you know, how much do you want to know? You know, clarify the question. If it is in 3 parts, you know, maybe write it down. Maybe just write the bits down they want. If you've got some paper in front of you, and just say, which bit am I answering? I think personally it is a bit bad practice if people ask you wordy questions. You know, which bit do they want answering? But always clarify afterwards. Say, is that enough detail, or is that what you wanted to know? The other question I didn't mention on the slides, but is my favourite question to ask at the end of an interview is there anything else that you need to know about me? So it's almost like a checking question. Have I missed anything? Is there anything that I haven't told you about myself? Possibly because you've asked me the wrong set of questions, that I haven't been able to showcase particular things. That's a great question to ask.
Just following on what you've said as well, I don't think a lot of people realize that you can't ask dyslexia, ADHD, or anyone neurodiverse. You can't ask open questions. For example, tell me about yourself. That would be, for example, to me, a big mystery box. I could start by my childhood, whatever. And I think as well, maybe for recruiters to remember, you need to specify, you know, with neurodiverse people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But that's why I say plan the answer to that question, because unfortunately it is a very common question. Just say what how much detail would you like me to give you? Where would you like me to start? Maybe that's more helpful.
Thank you very much.
Alyson, can I ask actually? So if you come out of an interview and you think, I wish I'd said that, or I wish I'd answered it in a different way, I really believe in that follow-up. We're saying, or follow-up comms, because I know that we've had a lot of people apply for certain roles. It makes you stand out from the crowd if you email and say, enjoyed meeting you, really want the role. Would you advise to give more information at that point if you feel like you could have answered something a bit better?
Yeah, I think it doesn't hurt. I think your point's a good one, Sarah. I think, if you're following up and saying thank you for your time and thank you for meeting me, you could just say, on reflection, there were a couple of things that you'd asked me that I think I missed, and this is the answer. I had a great example of a client who was being interviewed, and the fire alarm went off. They went out and had to come back in, and they said, well, sorry, we're out of time. And he emailed across almost like a presentation the answers to some of the questions he would have given. And I thought that was a great way of following up, because he did actually then get through to the next stage. So I would say there's no harm whatsoever in doing that now. I think it's a good shout.
Sorry, can I just follow up on the neurodiversity question? Because what I will say about that is, as well, Flora, is I think if somebody has those neurodiversity qualities, I think the important thing is in advance of the interview is just to find out, ask and check if there are any adjustments that could be made in advance of that interview, so that so those that have neurodiversity qualities will know what will work or won't work for them. So for instance, it could be something as simple as bright lights, so you might need to think about the lighting in the interview. it could be sound. So you would just make those adjustments to try and help and facilitate that interview for those people. So it's just about making those slight changes for that interview to still take place, but when as the person then feels comfortable in that environment. Thanks.
There are a couple of questions in the chat which are on a similar theme. One is what is the best thing to say if you've had little work experience, so you haven't been in full-time work even though you've done your qualification, and similarly is if you haven't got HR experience. Also a similar sort of theme really, you're working at a high level towards a level 7 qualification where you've got it but you've not necessarily got work experience. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is about skills, really. I always say pull out the skills. You know, what are your skills? So you can demonstrate skills in all areas of your life. You know, think about when you first leave university, you may have got some project skills or some people skills because you've done things, you know, at college or through your course. So I'd be very much focusing on what you bring as your skills to the party, because, you know, there are lots of transferable skills like communication, organisation, planning, problem solving, decision making. They're all key skills that we do in everyday life, and you can use various examples, whether they're through your education, through your volunteering. I know Sarah talked about that. You can get some great experience to doing some of those things, not necessarily, you know, work based.
Hi, Alyson. I have a question. I've just recently I had a couple interviews, my first HR interviews. I don't have experience in HR, and I'm currently studying level 3 for the entry jobs as an HR administrator or assistant. So I was lucky just to have one feedback from one interview, and it was a panel of 3 people, and what they told me that's my skills and experience wasn't very much, that examples I was given to them wasn't much related to HR administration. In fact, I have very good deal of the administration. I was as administrator for MBA students. So I have a lot of experience in general administration, but they said my experience wasn't really relevant for the HR, apart from I'm studying CIPD level 3. So that kind of was confusing, you know, what kind of examples I would give regarding on my skills, you know, which is if I don't have HR experience.
That is such a difficult one, isn't it? It is a difficult situation. You can't make up the experience you haven't got.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so hard. I think it's probably looking at the organisations sometimes that, you know, are willing to take a risk. Sometimes you need to get into an organisation in an admin role and then move into HR. But somewhere, you know, organisations will take a risk on you. They know that people need to get from, you know, entry level into HR roles. I think that's a shame, because a lot of the technical stuff, and we know that through the CIPD, can be taught. You know, there's so much support and help out there in terms of HR, and you build up your flying hours. Nobody who's starting at entry level is going to have all of the knowledge and experience that somebody like myself, who's got 30 years of CIPD membership, has got. You know, that's my flying hours. That I've built that up over the years of the experience I've had. So I think you need to acknowledge it and say, well, no, I don't have that experience, but either I'm willing to learn it, and I've done it theoretically, but also I have got lots of other experience that I bring to the organisation. That's how I would tackle that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alyson. Thank you.
I can see Islam's got his hand up, so maybe I'll just take one last question from Islam. You like to come off mute and ask your question?
Yeah, can you hear me first?
Yes.
Yep.
Brilliant. I have a question that arises from my personal interviews experiences. Do you recommend or do you not recommend paying attention to interviewers' facial expressions? And I ask that because from my interviews experience, I found out that they are very clever at keeping a straight or sort of plain face while listening to answers, which kind of sometimes worries me, because I feel like, oh, I've just hit my best answer to such question, and you can see a very plain face, zero reactions, absolutely nothing. So which kind of worries me. So should we pay attention to something like that, or should we just hit the answers that we think we did our best and go on?
I can see a few looks of recognition on other people's.
Yes.
as you're asking that question. So
it's a great question.
Thanks,
It's a great question. I think, yeah, I mean, what do you do in that scenario? You just got to keep going, haven't you? I mean, most interviewers don't set out to make it difficult for you. That's the thing I always say. You know, not many people get up in the morning and think, I'm going to give you such a really hard time that this is painful. I think it's about, you know, just doing your best. Some people will be playing that game, and I don't think it's helpful personally. But I do think you've got to keep going. You know, just keep your energy up, keep nodding, keep smiling, keep making eye contact, all of those things. Much harder on Zoom, I appreciate. But I do think, you know, you've just got to keep going with the stuff. Yeah, you're not going to get a round of applause when you've given your best answer, but you know, you know,
Yeah. So not to let the facial expressions dictate any of my energy or anything like that at all.
Try not to. If somebody's doing that to you, it's not helpful.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Alice put in the chat as well, but I think you said focus on the questions and answers and do your best.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all you can do. Be you at your best.
Well, thank you very much, Alison. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. I realise we haven't got to all the questions, but maybe we'll have a look at them afterwards and see if there's any sort of top tips that we can send out as well, along with the slides. But I'm just keen to get on to the last bit. I think I'm going to have to forego the screen break. Sorry about that. But we've got the people who come, especially really giving up their time to join us this evening for you to have a chat with them about their careers and their experiences. So I'm going to pop you through. I'll give you the option to join the breakout rooms. So we've got 5 people. We've got Jessica Cocker, Lucy Orchardson, Neil White, Depeche Mystery, and Bali Nizza. I sent out a summary of it this morning. If you've not had a chance to read it, don't worry about it. If you have, and there's somebody that you particularly want to see, then you've got an opportunity to join their room. Otherwise, just pick one, because they're all going to be really interesting. They've all got great short stories to share with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. You'll get the opportunity to choose which one you want to join, and then we'll have 12 minutes in one room, bring you back in very quickly, and then do a quick turnaround and you can join another room. So you'll get an opportunity to join 2 different people this evening. So let's open up the rooms and see how this goes. So have you all got an opportunity to join a room? Oh, I can see Neil's not. Okay, I'll start moving some people into rooms if they've not.
Yeah, some people obviously have, because the numbers have gone down, but there's nothing. Oh, that's it. I've got mine now.
Yeah, I've moved. Yeah, so I can see. I'll just make sure I've got the speakers in the rooms, and I'll start moving other people in. So I'm just going to start moving people across.